Good afternoon and welcome to our Luxembourg Private Equity Venture Capital Stories. Today we will have with us Hind El Gaidi from Astorg. She is Head of Financial Information and Valuation here in Luxembourg. Welcome, Hind.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Very happy to be here today.
It's a pleasure to have you and then to discuss a little bit what Astorg is doing and also about your career. As a quick reminder, also to our audience, you can ask your questions to Hind via the chat function or the Q&A button as usual. The show will be recorded and we will have then that Q&A at the end. Okay, then let's start, Hind. What can you tell us about your firm? How, when, and who started the Astorg adventure? What is Astorg's specialty and also philosophy?
Well, Astorg started in the 90s, in the end of the 90s. It's a spin-off of the Suez. So it was started with three partners, Xavier Moreno, Joël Lacourte, and Thierry Timsit. And back then, Xavier Moreno was the CEO of Astorg. And the first fund of Astorg was a fund where Suez supported Astorg in that fund. So Suez was the sponsor of the fund. And since then, the company has grown. And in 2015, there was a succession where Xavier Moreno has become the non-executive chairman, and Thierry Timsit, who was the youngest of the three founders, has taken over the CEO and chairman role, and he's still our CEO today. So today, the co-founders are still involved in the investment committee, in mentoring the team, so which is a pleasure to be there as well and to get involved with them in discussions and still have this continuity within the company. And Astorg is, to speak now a little bit about our specialty, our philosophy, Astorg is a pure equity play so far. So we've been in mid-cap and growing into large cap throughout the years. Now we also have a bit of mid-cap funds specific, and that's something we can speak about a little bit later. But what we call the Astorg deal is a B2B niche player with international footprints and international expansion potential.
Great. And any specific sectors then you're particularly following and investing in?
So indeed, there is a sector, let's say, focus around mainly 4 verticals, especially with the last funds of Astorg, whereby we see a lot of healthcare, software, some industrials and business services. This is still very wide when we say healthcare, right? So we see, because it goes with the Astorg deal, in terms of specialty going into the niche. So what you see most of the time is we will be, for instance, in very specific healthcare niches or insurtech in the software area. So teams become deeply specialized in very specific niches within those verticals. And within the Astorg 6 and now Astorg 7, which is currently being deployed, we have typically a growth pocket. So we also pursue some growth opportunities within this growth pocket, which represents around 10 or 20% of the fund, depending on which fund we're speaking about. And those will be deals where we don't necessarily have the majority, we will be in a minority, but with a very strong growth path as opposed to the other type of investment we have in the fund.
Quite interesting. And on the geographies, anything specific there?
On the geographies, we are a pan-European player. So we've been focused on Europe, and our LPs, let's say investors, come to us because we are a pan-European player. Having said that, in Astorg 7, we have started with the US pocket that have been so quickly filled up that we actually extended the pocket. We had to go back to our investors and extend that pocket because there is a very strong deal flow in terms of US deals. And maybe we didn't expect it to be so quickly available to us as a pure pan-European player before that. But now we have also 3 companies that are in the US.
Quite interesting also to look over the pond then. In 2015, Astorg acquired SGG, now known as IQEQ, as a leading front and services group. What can you tell us about that deal? Where are you now?
Where are we now? It's a very good conjuncture to speak about IQ-EQ. So IQ-EQ, I'd like to say it's the perfect example of the Astorg deal. It's a B2B niche, so it means that we see there the product differentiation and the criticality of the product, because we focus on specific areas within the sector of IQ-EQ. It's a fantastic M&A platform. We've done over the 5 years now of IQ-EQ around 16 acquisitions for IQ-EQ. So some of them are transformative and some of them are bolt-on acquisitions to expand our presence in terms of products, services, or geographies. And we also had quite some work there around integration, of course, because of the M&A platform concept that we have with IQ-EQ, but also with other companies of the portfolio. And we also worked on governance there because there was a succession from the previous CEO to the new management that is there today. And so much so that because we've invested so much in IQ-EQ and the journey has not, we're not at the end of the journey yet. So we've gone into a continuation fund with IQ-EQ, which is currently actually in the making. So we will be still with IQ-EQ and we will continue the journey with them for a couple of years again to foster even more the whole integration and to get it where we want to, because we are not that kind of investor that we say we want in and out. And if we feel that we need to spend a little bit more time there, we will be spending more time there, and which is the case now with the IQ-EQ.
So also then a real buy and build success story here.
Absolutely.
When we now look at Astorg and its internal setup, how many persons work globally for Astorg and where are those mainly located?
How many? We remain maybe a modest player in a way. We are today around 125, 130 people globally. At our level, the growth has been fantastic. We morphed literally from a French boutique with a center of gravity in Paris to being a kind of a pan-European with a center of gravity in Luxembourg and with teams in Paris, London, with the representation in Milan and Frankfurt, and now with a team in New York.
You mentioned the Luxembourg office. How many are you then in Luxembourg and which licenses on which operating model do you use here?
So we are an AFMD here in Luxembourg. We are a team of around 30 people. Maybe the characteristic of the team in Luxembourg is that 5 years ago, when we started the office, we made the conscious decision to put all the activities that are not investment related, let's say not the investment professionals, but all the rest in Luxembourg, as opposed to, let's say, move the fund operations here and have the rest somewhere else, either in Paris or in London or in other jurisdictions. So today we have, in terms of operating model, we have all the functions, meaning compliance, risk management, financial information, marketing, all of it in Luxembourg and done internally. So we only have one small bit that is outsourced, but all the rest is done internally.
Okay, very interesting. So an in-source local model.
Absolutely.
And last year, what happened at Astorg, for example, since it was a complicated year globally, but yeah. What can you tell us there?
Well, last year, I mean, maybe it's the opportunity to take the time to acknowledge that last year has been difficult for a lot of people among us, and at professional levels and also at personal levels, that I feel privileged to be here today to speak about great things, and that is a way also to say that and to illustrate that we are so eager to connect again and to share content and to look forward something beyond the short-termism that we've been put into for the last year. Within Astorg, it has been a very particular year because for the first time, as I was explaining earlier, we have taken the bet to go on side funds because so far we've only been going into successor funds. So Astorg 1, 2, 3, 4. And in 2020, we have two novelties. So one is the Astorg Midcap, which came natural to us because we've been a mid-cap investor all along, but because our funds have been growing, we are now in larger deals, larger tickets. So mid-cap was the opportunity to still capture that part of the sector of the deal flow, but also to still continue using our expertise in mid-cap. So that's one. And then the second one is the continuation fund that I just explained. That was also the novelty for us. So meaning that we've been in full swing fundraising of two funds since April.
Okay, so quite flexible and creative then. On the ESG fronts, and what is a bit your policy and strategy? How active or ready are you?
Well, I mean, if you look at Astorg's first slogan, I think it was providing fair capital. So it wasn't called ESG there, or it wasn't this kind of buzzword around it, but it has always been within the Astorg deal, the Astorg way of working, the Astorg way of seeking investors, because the initial idea was to accompany entrepreneurs, family businesses, into and being part of that economic fabric, creating this economic fabric. I mean, obviously, the more we grow, the more we have access to larger deals, and then you continue creating an economic fabric, but at a larger level. Now today, there are policies around ESG, so we have all those policies, but what really matters to me and to people who work within Astorg is that the tone from the top that really comes in everything we do in general, in approaching the deal, in analyzing it, in presenting it in the IC, in monitoring it, and accompanying the entrepreneur or the management in terms of development, in value creation, but that is also within those ESG principles. How ready are we? I mean, we will never feel ready because it's always going so quickly and we always want to catch up with things. Having said that, we made a decision lately to go with let's say, one of the highest levels of disclosure in terms of the SFDR. So that puts the bar very high for us for the current funds that we are raising, but also for the upcoming fundraisings. And this is a way also to showcase our commitment to our teams, to our IC, but also to especially to our investors, I have to say.
And if we now take a helicopter view and look at the Luxembourg financial hub and ecosystem, what could or should we potentially upgrade here in the future in order to remain that successful player?
Yeah, I mean, there are many angles there. I can take a stance and say one of the angles we look at is attracting talent. And because we've made the conscious decision of having certain roles here in Luxembourg, but also having certain profiles here in Luxembourg, it feels sometimes that it's extremely complicated to have the people come to Luxembourg. First, because maybe sometimes it wasn't part of the plan, it wasn't known to them. And then all the infrastructure around it does not always allow for that. It can be at personal level, but also at professional level for people who want to still go to their families on a more frequent basis, things like that. On the other hand, something that we also, I would say, crave sometimes is and that we would really like to encourage is the sophistication and the professionalism in general around the service providers for areas like digitalization, like support for instance, fundraising, marketing activities, that we still have to, we seek service providers from London or from Paris or the Netherlands, but we don't always find the right answer in Luxembourg.
Thank you for sharing these ideas. And now, certainly as one of the LPA board members also, we know that this is a very important topic in your eyes. And that's why then with the academy, with the job fair we're organizing next week, etc., all those kind of projects can or could help in the future also for the talents. But that's a really good step. And then let's try to transform that for the Luxembourg Hub.
Sure.
Hind, if now we become a little bit more personal, so what can you tell us about your studies and how did you start your career?
My studies. So I started my bachelor studies in France, in the south of France. It wasn't that bad at all. And I was majoring in economics and minor in business law. And after which I moved to the Netherlands for my MSc in financial management. I've also had the opportunity to do an MBA during my time in the Netherlands. After which I started as an intern at PwC M&A team in Amsterdam. And shortly after that internship, I ended up in the Deals Valuation team. And there it was, I was there for 10 years, around 10 years, working on deals, especially in software, but also on some special industries in the Netherlands. With some large, Euronext players. So it was a very, very, very interesting experience. And then an opportunity arose in Luxembourg. So it was more, why not? And it was an opportunity, it was a complete paradigm shift going from working with corporates to an area where there's a lot of private equity. So we used to work with private equity would be the owner, but then you would have a corporate. And here it was really service in the funds. So complete shift. It allows to really, we see a different side of the business, a different, a wider scope in terms of this whole private equity industry in general. And then moving into Astorg widens for me the scope, because where we would think as an advisor from the outside that we kind of have an idea of how the funds were working together, how the team, the organization, etc. Once you're from the inside, it's even more complex, and it requires quite some synchronization to have all the team moving together towards the same direction, either for monitoring, servicing the LPs in current funds or fundraising for that matter.
Can only congratulate you for that choice. We're very happy to have you with your engagement and also strong energy.
Thanks.
Any values and you personally appreciate and respect globally?
Well, there is a value I always say, and I encourage anyone I speak to, either in my team or in my recruitment interviews, is to be intellectually curious, because I value that more than people who are so technically sound but not curious. To my opinion, if you're curious, you can always learn and you can always become better, improve at that. To me, what helped me, at least to see where I am today and also where I want to continue growing, is to be purpose-driven and not in a short-term manner, but really finding that purpose that will say, that will always be that guiding North Star that I will follow. And next to that, being very intentional about what I do. And that's extremely helpful, because it allows to block the noise and to really focus on that specific intention. And that's how you build your expertise over time, right? And with that, it doesn't come, you can be intentional and purpose-driven, but still it doesn't make you get where you want to get, because there is the third factor to me is being relentless. You have to do that over and over again to prove that you're consistent, that you can deliver all the time on certain aspects. And that's how you prove to yourself, you prove to the others that you are at that certain level where they can expect you that you are reliable, trustworthy, and that you can continue go. So those are, to me, the values that I usually rely upon to guide my path.
Good values, constant improvements makes absolutely sense, and also for us to push further, discover new projects, and be curious. Great. While keeping that in mind, you mentioned how you entered the field, different values. Which piece of advice could you give, for example, to young talents?
I mean, it's very overwhelming, I think, when you are young and you want to enter into an industry and you browse through websites and LinkedIn and you follow, but then you don't know where is this entry point, and you see all these people having great careers and you want to be part of it, but then how? I fully relate because I was there. And what I found helped quite a lot, I have to say, is first finding a place where to belong. Like, this is a team where I belong. This is my place. And that's very difficult because again, there is the noise and there is what the others are doing, and maybe there is an opportunity for me. But finding that place where you belong, that is aligned with your values, usually makes improvements for you at all levels, because they will notice you, they will give you the opportunities, they will also help you and push you further. And if you are not within a company, then it can also be for an entrepreneur, finding a place in an incubator or finding that business angel that will mentor you and push you there. So that's important. And the second aspect to me is that relentless again. You go back to then be patient, prove that you can do it, and most importantly, give yourself a chance.
Never give up,
yeah.
for sure. And also the quest for sense, I think, is also something very important nowadays, and
yes.
to be at the right place with the right family or in the right industry.
I mean, we are a generation, I have to say, that we are privileged to be able to seek these things, because we can allow ourselves to do that beyond then paying the bill. So create that space and take that chance in order to move the lines.
Sounds like a plan. Any specific leader or person who inspired you?
Well, I don't have a leader. I don't have a specific role model, but what I'd like to see and to say is that I usually look at different profiles, read biographies, see people either known or not so known, and what I usually just look at is that grit they have and that desire to make the change, and how consistent they are about it, and they go above and beyond to make that happen, and that's the common thread. So if you're looking for motivation, for me, that's the greatest way to seek and to tap into that energy, to give you energy. Over the last years, I've been very intentional again on looking on a specific area and to educate myself around it, which is about gender equality. So I followed specific role models like Sheryl Sandberg and specific and the alike, because before that matters to me. But also I have the opportunity maybe to do something about it, so why not? But before going there, I wanted to make sure that at least I know what's out there, what's being said, what's the dialogue, how to avoid the common mistakes before I speak about it. So for me, Sheryl Sandberg is a very good example of bringing your status, bringing your expertise, which and also putting that gender lens through it. She wrote this book, Lean In, that was highly criticized at first, but then if you look at it with a more, let's say, open angle, you can learn a lot from it. But there are also a lot of other role models around this topic. I don't say she's the one and the only. And that, for me, was also a way to move into the Lean In circles. That is, it's an initiative that was initiated by Sheryl Sandberg. and to create a mentorship group with young women who wanted, to move further in their careers, to gain some self-confidence, to develop, to make certain decisions that really matters to them, to their families. And we've been running that group now for almost 3 years.
Very interesting. And concerning diversity, why on earth would we not benefit from all those talents, be it female or male?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be a difference at all.
And next to your work, where we really feel that you're very passionate, what does Hind read, listen to concerning books, series, podcasts, music, anything you want to share and recommend to our audience?
Well, if I look at a common thread, I'm a psychology and behavior junkie, so I read a lot of material on that. So any book by Adam Grant, Brené Brown, Malcolm Gladwell, I find it fantastic to just go into that. So for instance, the originals by Adam Grant really goes into why some entrepreneurs are successful, why some people have, made their mark in our history or in creating this company, and looking at it from very interesting aspects. And one of the aspects, for instance, that I found extremely interesting, that he looks at the order of children in a family to kind of predict what the kids will be doing over time. So they had the study that followed certain kids for years to see that, for instance, the first one is usually the pleaser and will go to a more conventional job. The second one, if he's born within the 5 years time frame, they will try to do something extremely different to kind of create that separation with the first one. And it's extremely interesting to see how that can be framed, from this angle of sociology. Brené Brown, also a great read, especially about her work about vulnerability in general, where there is a complete shift in the dialogue about vulnerabilities being weak versus vulnerability allows you to build trust, or dare to lead, which is kind of the continuity of that work. So this is what I read in general.
Very interesting. Also then, as you mentioned, then to look for patterns in families, and also then here with Brené Brown, then we are not all superheroes, but then let's work hard in order to make it possible. Great. I think it would be now time to move on to the Q&A. The audience, now is the time to ask your questions to Hind. If you want to know more about the specific angle of the Astorg activity or the angle of the talent management and career like Hind did, for example, now is the time. I let 2 more seconds. Okay, I think then was a very good show. Thanks a lot, Hind, for your time, for joining us today, for sharing all those things with us. And also to you, the audience, thanks for joining today. And we'll just give you now a very quick preview then of what's up next on the LPA agenda. So next week, we will have then our job fair. We will have a webinar also with the Swiss Private Equity Association. We will have also our Academy on Private Debt. And finally, also a brand new infrastructure webinar, which is part of the new investment opportunities and strategies. So thanks a lot for joining and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.